Your Excellencies, if I can ask you to look into the camera.
While President Biden was meeting with NATO leaders in a show of unity in Europe, the Ukrainian military claimed to have destroyed one of Russia's ships in the port city of Berdyansk. Ukraine's navy said the destroyed vessel was the Russian Alligator-class landing ship Orsk, which docked earlier this week. The Russian military said it was to be used for delivery of cargo and military equipment to Russian forces. Now imagine what could be achieved if NATO actually started to do more to ensure Russia's defeat. The stunning fact of this war is that the Ukrainians have rescued Europe and the US as much as NATO is assisting Ukraine. Kiev's resistance, at great human cost, has given the West a chance to stop the advance of Russian imperialism before it imperils NATO.
Russia doesn't want to stop on Ukraine. It wants to go further against the eastern members of NATO, Baltic countries, Poland, that's for sure.
Vladimir Putin's war has exposed the Russian military as weaker than intelligence services and the Pentagon first thought. Yet Western leaders still seem worried of what would happen if Ukraine won. Some, preferring Mr. Zelensky, agree to a peace settlement sooner rather than later.
There's never any expression of wanting to win. So when we go to NATO, I think we got to clear this up somewhat.
That's especially true in the Biden administration, which has taken many good steps, such as today's announcement that the US will take in 100,000 refugees, but never with the immediacy needed. Yes, Mr. Biden has labelled Vladimir Putin a war criminal, yet he still seems afraid of doing what's needed to defeat him. At the White House on Tuesday, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was asked twice if he and the president thought Ukraine could win. His answer:
they are never going to be able to achieve the purpose that they set out, which was to subjugate this country, to bring this country to heel.
This cautious commitment extends to the slow pace of weapons being delivered. Even Slovakia has offered its S-300 missile defense system, which, granted, hasn't been delivered yet. But what's happened to the US delivery of Switchblade loitering drones? The US should be emptying and restocking its weapons stockpiles on an emergency basis.
If Russia is provoked by NATO, if Russia is attacked by NATO, I don't know. So we are nuclear power. Why not?
Ultimately, it's ominous comments like Dmitry Polyansky's that make it hard not to conclude that Mr. Putin has succeeded in intimidating Mr. Biden and other leaders with his threats of nuclear escalation. And while this concern may justify the decision not to assist Ukraine with a NATO no-fly zone, it shouldn't be an excuse for caution in doing everything else that can be done to help Ukrainians defeat Mr. Putin.
Though it's not the right thing to threaten Russia and to try to interfere. So when you're dealing with a nuclear power, of course you have to calculate all the possible outcomes of your behavior.
If the nuclear threat works to stop NATO support now, Mr. Putin will use it in the future against NATO proper. The essence of deterrence is credibility, which means persuading Mr. Putin that his resort to nuclear weapons in Ukraine will be met with a requisite response. The same goes for chemical or biological weapons.
Any use of chemical weapons would fundamentally change the nature of the conflict. It will be a blatant violation of international law, and it will have widespread and severe consequences.
Our fear is Mr. Biden and perhaps other NATO leaders will lean on Mr. Zelensky to agree to let Ukraine become one more frozen conflict like Georgia. We want Mr. Biden to lead and succeed in Ukraine, but he needs to lead more decisively and with a goal not merely of military stalemate, but of Ukrainian victory.